I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fort on. Colors, Trevor. Mark.
And before I ask you to be seated, if we can get another round of ovation for our service. I don't know about y'all, but that always puts me in a really good mood. So please be seated. And at this time, I'd like to ask Pastor Schaefer to come up and give the invocation.
Father, we thank you for this day. I thank you for, and we all do, for each of those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for freedom in this nation, for freedom of others. Thank you for the families that have given and sacrificed. We acknowledge you as our comfort, as our strength, as our all in all. So we thank you for your grace and your blessings on this time, and that you do comfort and strengthen and give us understanding greater and greater as we pray for this nation, our leaders in every area of that freedom is not free. It has to be paid for, fought for. So we thank you for those who have done that and their families. In Jesus' name, amen.
So I have to tell you, I told the pastor before he came up here that if he went any longer than a minute, I would have to tap him on his shoulder, but I think he did a great job. All right. So again, welcome. This represents another opportunity for us, and I say us because we are a family, to have a two-way conversation and to keep a two-way conversation going. So with that, if I can get a show of hands for anyone who this is their first time attending the Korean Cold War. And then I'm only going to call out one. I know I had one young lady who, you've been here 22, is this your 22nd or 23rd? 92. Since 92. Can you just stand up? One of the nicest ladies I've ever met in my life, truly. Okay, so a couple words that I'd like to, for logistics. Okay, so you know that you have the refreshments out in the hallway here, my right, your left, and we also have bathrooms located to the rear out the hallway. Please, at any time, if you need to, make sure that you're comfortable and, do what you need to do throughout the morning briefings. I would also ask you at this time to make sure that you do fill out your surveys. Surveys are a big deal to us. We do, in fact, read every single survey. Just ask Mr. McKeague. He makes sure that he reads them and comes back and quizzes me to make sure that I read them as closely as he did. So what does a survey mean? A survey means that it's your comments that make us better. It's your comments that we implement moving forward to make sure when we reach out to other families of the missing, whether it be a family member update or an annual government briefing, that we get it right based on what you guys want. Very, very important. Okay, Facebook Live. So who here does social media? Just about everybody, right? All right, so we are doing Facebook Live. This is up on our homepage right now. airing live, and it'll also be archived. Now, what's the good news about having an archived Facebook Live? Well, let's just say you missed something over the course of the next 2 days, or you want to go back and relook at something to get more information, or to say, hey, what did they really say? It's your opportunity to make sure that you have the capability to go up and look at Facebook Live. And we will also post this on YouTube. How many of y'all like to go to YouTube versus Facebook Live? Okay, so totally understand that. And again, that was a survey comment that we received to make sure that we're better. Okay, at this time, I'd also like to just recognize, do y'all remember those that attended last year that we had the #1 ID? Remember the K-55, the repatriation that came from North Korea, South Korea, then back to Honolulu for the honorable carry on 1 August? Hard to believe that it's been 1 year, but we do have the first ID was Master Sergeant Charles McDaniel, medic. We do have his son, Colonel Chaplain, retired United States Army, Charles McDaniel Jr. Charles, if you can stand up. Now, here's what I love about chaplains is that when I talk to Charles, you know, the reason why he's here is for fellowship. So reach out to him, talk to him. He wants to talk. And he's a great guy. He will listen. And he also has some pretty wonderful stories that's happened to him over the course of the last year. So Charles, welcome. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to do a slight audible here. And I've talked to a number of young folks, and they all happen to be young ladies. If I could get them to come up here real quickly. I think there's 3 of you that I've spoken to. And I did ask to make sure that nobody was shy. And I told them that they needed to come up here and make sure that I'm not nervous. Come on up. Right here, young lady. Up. For the record, I'm not doing that at any point during this. Tell you what, I'm going to get y'all to stand right here. So first off, what I'd like you to do is just introduce yourselves, just to the 3 of you. Shake hands with each other. Just make sure you introduce yourselves. But when you say hi, you got to say your name. All right, big smiles. All right, so you say, why did I bring these beautiful young ladies up here? Well, the main reason I brought them, it hit me last night when we were at the Twilight Tattoo, when I talked to 2 of them, that, you know what, this is a generational effort that we have to have as we move forward on this mission to make sure that we continue to honor your loved ones and others' loved ones who still have not come home. These young ladies, okay, real loud, how old are you? 7. Louder. 7, 10. They represent the future. They're going to come here, and we're going to call them up later, and they're going to be quizzed in public. First day of school, you just didn't know that. No, in all seriousness, this is about the generational effort. And thank you, you know, young ladies, 1, for coming, even though I'm sure you were told you were coming, didn't have a choice. But in all seriousness, pay attention today. You're going to learn something. You're going to hear a lot of great stuff. And you're going to see what it means to honor those that are still missing who have not come home. So if I can get a round of applause for these young ladies. Thank you, guys. All right, I couldn't help myself with that when I saw them last night. And I'm going to go with Skylar. She had the biggest smile when I talked to her, and she wasn't afraid of me, so it was pretty cool. Okay. So a couple things have happened today. Number 1, I have this glass thing, so I can't be fidgety back here this year. All right, so now what I'd like to do is we're going to watch the DPAA video. If we can have the lights dim, please.
We write no last chapters. We close no books. We put away no final memories. An end to America's involvement in Vietnam cannot come before we have achieved the fullest possible accounting of those missing in action.
Why keep searching? The answer is simple. You never leave a fallen American behind. The mission of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA, is to provide the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel to their families and their nation. Strategically located in Arlington, Virginia, with major facilities at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, Hawaii, and Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska, the more than 600-person newly established defense agency is jointly manned by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Department of Defense civilians with specialized skills. Researching, recovering, identifying, and ultimately returning an individual to their family begins with analysis and investigation. The DPAA experts begin the search by studying all known information regarding the circumstances of each loss. Historians and analysts gather information from U.S. veterans, foreign witnesses, archival records, and other sources. They then create a case file for each unaccounted for American. This file may include historical records, official correspondence, maps, photographs, daily activity logs, and medical and personnel records of the missing person. These files are continually updated until an identification is made.
Once the research has been done here, and we get the command's approval, we send out small teams. It could be up to 2 people, it could be a 10-person team, conducting interviews at a villager's house, at a district office, or in a combination of going to the site first and then conducting the interviews on site.
Once all available information is analyzed, a decision can be made to disinter individuals buried as unknown or conduct field investigations. During a typical investigation mission, personnel interview potential witnesses, conduct on-site reconnaissance, and survey terrain for safety and logistical concerns. Teams also try to generate new leads that may result in future recoveries. The main goal of the investigation is to obtain enough information to correlate or connect a particular site with one or more missing Americans. If enough on-site evidence is found, the site will be recommended for recovery and excavation. Recovery sites range in size from a few square meters, such as in individual burials, to areas larger than football fields for aircraft crashes. DPAA may hire as many as 100 local workers to help with the excavation process.
This job has so many benefits. For me personally, it's an opportunity to serve the country, but also our fighting forces and kind of contribute to that as well. Professionally, it's just an incredible challenge to get to work in all the countries where we work, to travel to these amazing sites, to work with the local villagers and local officials, and just have the opportunity to give somebody some answers after decades of waiting to know what happened to their loved one, and maybe just wrestling with the grief that lack of information and lack of answers brings. We have the chance to resolve that for them, and that's just an incredible opportunity.
Investigative and recovery missions in search of missing Americans take DPAA personnel to distant, remote, and often dangerous locations all over the globe. Rice paddies in Southeast Asia, areas on the Korean Peninsula, 16,000-foot mountaintops in the Himalayas, and underwater sites off the coast of Papua New Guinea. And we still continue to search the battlefields of World War II throughout Europe. After a successful recovery, all evidence is then transported to the DPAA laboratories. Once they've arrived in the lab, the painstaking process of identification begins. This is the final step of the mission, leading to the return of an individual. In many of the cases, an important step in the identification process is DNA analysis, which is accomplished by cutting a bone sample that is sent to the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory. One of the challenges DPAA faces today is the lack of reference samples from family members of those still unaccounted for. Any person who is a relative of an unaccounted for American is encouraged to contact their service casualty office to ensure there is a DNA reference sample on file for that service member. DPAA makes an identification when all available evidence, remains, artifacts, and historical documents point to the same person. The ID process can take anywhere from a few months to several years to complete. Any unresolved cases are kept open with the hope that new evidence will be found or new technologies will be developed to make a future identification possible. Once an American has been identified, their remains are returned to their family through their respective service casualty office. They are returned home with full military honors and given the respect they earned through their service and sacrifice for their country.
Oh, as a family member, this agency, to me, is doing phenomenal work, and in a very personal way, because when somebody loses somebody like my father, and you really don't know what the story is for 70 years, and then you find an agency that knows about him and keeps his memory alive, keeps the mission alive to try to find him. It's very meaningful in a very personal way, because it means you're not just doing this yourself alone. You have a whole body of people who are concerned about finding your dad and bringing him home.
That says something about how we honor our dead, particularly those who have served this nation. I'm very grateful to all of the DPAA and related agencies and the military in general, as they've pursued this in our government, and for our citizens, because they think it's an important enough mission to continue. And the way we value life, and very few nations, I don't think any other nation to this degree does this.
Which, makes me proud to be an American.
I just wanted to yell openly to everybody out there, he's home, he's home. I couldn't believe it. And when I went up and touched his name, I thought, you're home, you're home. It's unbelievable. I'm glad I live in the United States of America and that we have this attitude. Leave no man behind. We're so fortunate. I want you to know, and I know from my own experience, that if something's happened to you, we will be looking for you.
The men and women of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency are united in their effort to recover and return as many of our missing personnel as possible. One more patriot return, one more family that now has answers. One more step in fulfilling our nation's promise.
All right, so before we go into the remembrance ceremony, I just want to, if you're in need of a wheelchair, we do have wheelchairs that are available. And I also want to highlight that we also do have members of the media that are in attendance. If you're uncomfortable speaking with the media, just let us know, let the government know. Major Romero raising his hand, just let him know. He's a bulldog, he'll come and take care of things. And then where's MC1 Coulter? Staff Sergeant Fortson, right there. He's one of our photographers. And so the photos that you see, he's one of the guys that goes out and gets those photos when we deploy for mission. So thank you for your service. And he's not shy and likes to talk too, so go up and ask him questions. Okay, so now if I can get you to take your agenda and look on the back page. I'm sorry, folks, all the way on the back. So there should be, for the remembrance ceremony, there should be a format on there. So I would ask that for the remembrance ceremony, is there, yes, ma'am. Yeah, so on the very back, there is a format that we will use for the remembrance ceremony. So the remembrance ceremony is your opportunity to honor your loved one. Now, I say that because I ask you to honor your loved one and to make sure that we keep it respectful and I'm going to say it, kind of short. Not to lessen anything, but the number of folks that we have here, I just want to make sure everyone has the opportunity. So to that, we've spread this over 2 days. So we're going to do a remembrance ceremony today and a remembrance ceremony tomorrow. Why are we doing that? Because last year, that's what y'all said you wanted us to do. So we listened to you on the survey. So what I want to do now, and it'll give you a little time to make sure that you can stay in step with the format, is we had PFC Jones, who was identified, he was the second one identified from the K-55. Nickname was Hoover. When we were in Greensboro, North Carolina, we got to go and visit with his sisters, 94, 91. And they told me that their wild sister, who was, I think she had just turned 90, was in Maryland and wasn't able to be there. PFC Jones will be buried in Arlington August 22nd. So what I want to do is show a video to kind of frame getting ready to go into the remembrance ceremony.
We hadn't heard from him in about 3 months, and Mama undoubtedly felt something. So when the news came, she just had to lay down, and she laid on the bed and sent for me. I was at work at the Spalding High School in Spring Hope, so I immediately went home to be with my mother.
Surprised, shocked, unbelievable, really.
I was happy to know that after all these years, somebody, somewhere, was concerned with after call us.
Yeah. That meant a lot.
I think the good Lord is in it.
Yeah.
Because how could they have waited all these years and then came to us to bring some relief? It's really a relief to know something about what really happened to him.
Don't give up.
I just hope you all will continue to do this kind of work, to follow up on so many of the lost ones. It means a lot to us, and I know it will mean the same to them. It's a wonderful job you all are doing, following up after all these years. We thought we would never hear anything else. So thank you so very much for taking time to come and work with Hoover. Because this work you all do, and you do it every day, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, what we're going to do is, so the rules of engagement for the remembrance ceremony, we have folks that have microphones. All you have to do is just raise your hand. The microphone will come to you. Please speak into the microphone so that everybody can hear you. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up.
Yes, my name's Richard Dean. I'm the vice chairman of the Korean War Veterans Memorial Foundation, and my father is a Korean War vet. He's sitting right here, but my grandfather is also missing in action. He was shot down in a RB-45C, landed in China, and then handed over to the Russians, and then he was stoned to death in North Korea. But more importantly, our foundation, we've got a couple tables out in the back area. We're in the process of trying to construct a wall of remembrance at the National Korean War Veterans Memorial here in Washington, D.C. It'll list the 36,574 veterans that perished during the war. Right now, we've got a law that's been passed by Congress and signed by President Obama in 2016, and we're in the process of fundraising. Excuse me? I will. And sorry about that. So we're trying to raise funds to help build this wall of remembrance to honor your family members. We're expecting that it'll cost $25 million, and we've gotten some significant, from the Republic of Korea, they've endorsed it 3 times by President Moon, so we're going in that process. We've hired an architect, and we're moving forward. But we could use your help, and if you can spare a few minutes, see me in the back table. Thank you.
All right, so again, folks, remember, the remembrance ceremony is meant to honor your loved one, please.
Yes, good morning. My name's Ed Adams. I just wanted to share a thought with you, being a member of you as a member. My mentor, a man by the name of W. Clement Stone, that name may ring a bell with you, he taught me that every adversity carries with it a seed of equivalent or greater benefit for those who've got a positive mental attitude. My brother, Charlie, he and I were in Korea at the same time. I made it out, he didn't. However, he was the last part of my immediate family. Now, what I'm saying is, as bad and horrible as that was, it's so wonderful to have a new family, which you are, and I appreciate that so very, very much, and your support, and thank you so very much.
My name's John Schaefer. I'm here for my uncle Gaylord Schaefer. He was a member of the 4th Battalion, 11th Marines in Chosin Reservoir. He's been missing for 25,079 days. And we're here for my aunt. She is Uncle Gaylord's last remaining sibling. And after this meeting, I'd love to talk to anybody that's had members attached to 411. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Harnish. I'm the daughter of Charlie Rice Jr. He was a Marine pilot. His unit was VMF 212, MAG 33, 1st Marine Air Wing, and he was shot down over North Korea April 22nd, 1951. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rick Downs. I'm here for my dad, Lieutenant Hal Downs, Air Force, who went down in B-26 January 1952. And this is kind of a special kind of time for us, our family, and him, and shows how these men's stories can keep going on. My dad was a goalie for the 1951 University of Michigan NCAA championship hockey team. And thank you. I think you're proud of that. Well, the university called just 2 weeks ago, and they are going to honor him in their Hall of Fame. And so they're flying my sister and I out. We lost our mom last year. And so if you're watching the Michigan State game, football game, on November 15th, look for his name, and maybe even us, I don't know, but they're doing a nice deal on it, so it's nice to think of my father's story just kind of still going on, and it's kind of special for us. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Melody White, and I'm here with my aunts, and we are here to remember Sergeant Billy Rogers, U.S. Army, A Company, 1st 32nd Regiment, 7th Infantry Division. He went missing December 2nd, 1950 in the Chozon Reservoir.
My name is Ann Shepard Winstead. I am the niece of PFC Johnny Street, Army. His unit was the G Company, 2nd Battalion of the 2nd Infantry Regiment of the 7th Infantry. His date of missing was October 24, 1953, and his presumptive death was declared on December 31, 1953. And I'm here today, I've been here for the last 4 or 5 years, but I want to keep his memory alive. Just shared with some other family members the trip to Seoul, South Korea, and that was a wonderful experience because it gave us an opportunity to know what the men who fought during that war was fighting for. But we still are waiting and trying to bring closure to what happened to him. And this has been a great deal of support to know the people here and the people that I've met over these past years. And we'll continue in this struggle to bring his memory to full expression through a memorial in Arlington. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
My name is John Nelson, and I am here for my father, who was Captain Forrest Archie Nelson. He was with VMA 212 in Korea. He was shot down, captured, and from these fine folks, now we realize that he was actually killed at that time. This group supplying us with this information is greatly appreciated. This is the first time I've ever been able to say my father in a public place. God bless America. God bless the Gore.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tamra Briley. I'm here representing my grandparents who've passed on with hopes their son would walk up the driveway any day, but he never did. His name is Sergeant Richard Berry. He was in the Army in Company C and all that other stuff I don't really understand. And also I'm representing my daddy, who I really believe thinks of his brother every day. And then now it's Skylar Marie, and y'all met her. And we thank you, and we're placing our hopes in you now, and God. God bless everybody.
I'm Louie Edwards, and my father was Captain Lewis Holland, and he went missing on a night bombing mission. He was in the Air Force, and there has been no recovery because the water was so deep, and there's not been any ability to get in and even see exactly where the plane went down. But I would also just like to echo the woman up here who talked about going to Korea. When my dad was missing, he just was missing. We were living at Lackland in Texas, and came back to Wisconsin, and there just was never any talk about him. If I would ask, it would be, you know, you're trying to make me feel bad. And I got, as an adult, I get that. My mom was very young. I have learned more coming to these meetings and on that Korea trip than I ever knew about my dad. I didn't know when he was missing. I never knew, I knew zero. I had a picture of him outside of his plane in Texas. That was the extent of what I had. About 10 years after that, I saw his high school diploma. That was the extent of anything I knew about my dad. So for everybody in the past and here that continues to organize these trips and to give us this information, you have no idea on a one-to-one level what that means and the history that it gives us. Thank you all for everything you do.
I'm Doug Anderson. My dad was Captain Douglas R. Anderson. He was in the Army, the medical 21st Regiment. On June 26, 1950, he left from Japan. We were in Japan. And I was born July 3rd, 1950. He was captured on July 10th, 1950, and marched up to the Chozon Reservoir. Was part of the Death March. Can't think of his name. Kind of lost it right at the moment. But that Death March went up there to the apex. We believe he may be buried in Andong or the Kayan Bowl apex camp. It's really something. My brother buried him 5 years ago, and my mother a year ago. So I'm really the only one left besides my daughter and my niece and nephew. And we're so grateful for this get-together that we get to have, and that the time and effort that's put in, and that our country feels so good about their people, and they don't forget them. Like that said in the film, there's not too many who do that. And I feel that what our country does, it just shows the freedom and how important this country is, and how we have to do what we can to save it the way it is. And I can't thank you and every military person in here for everything they do just to put this on for us, because nobody knows what it's really like. I mean, I never had a father that I knew. I knew something about him, but I've learned so much from this. I was at another one back several years ago. And then after the 55 came back, it was like whole renewed hope. And then to hear this gentleman here, who was the first one, and then I pray to the Lord every day that I get to put my father to rest in Arlington Cemetery. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Charles Hebert. I'm here with my wife Joyce, my sister Alice, and her husband Jim. We are here for our father, Lieutenant Charles K. Hebert, U.S. Army, Headquarters 10th Corps. He lost on November 28, 1950, Chosin Reservoir. We've been coming, this is probably over 25 events like this, annual and regionals that we've been to. We will continue to come until hopefully one day we can find him. But we want to thank every one of you folks again and again for all the work you do for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm here representing my uncle, Patrick Cassidy, who was killed November the 2nd, 1950 at Yunsan. This is my third trip to these, and we've learned so much about it, my cousin and I, and we set out and had a few things accomplished. One of them, he did make the trip over to Korea with his wife here, and also we found out that we could have a marker placed in Arlington in his memory. And we did last year and had the ceremony. And also, we went ahead in Pennsylvania, where we're from, we're having a bridge named after him. in which Governor Wolf has signed it, and we're waiting to do the ceremony. I wish to thank all of you for, everything that you did, that we've done with this and everything. Thank you.
I'm here to represent my father. My name is Deborah Thurmond Yates. My father was Sergeant Reuben Thurmond Jr., who was captured in November, December of 1950, at which time my mother was pregnant with me. I wasn't born until January of 1951, and my father was in the Battle of the River Chanchan. As they traveled from point A to point B, the Communist Chinese elite forces traveled with them with no clothing on because they were used to working in that type of environmental temperatures. So they were captured, and then my father was in a POW camp, and he died from pneumonia. Now I realize that we are not on good terms with North Korea, and there's many of our servicemen that may never be found. However, as resourceful as our nation is, and we're the most powerful nation in the world, there should be another way that we can find our servicemen, because your motto, like you said, no American is left behind. So what other resources are we going to use to find our servicemen? Because I, for one, even though I never knew my father, I would love to be able to honor his remains at some point.
Good morning. My name is Brian Hope. I'm here with my brother Gary. We're here to we're here for my uncle Harry Miller from Munson, Mass. He was with the K Company, 3rd Battalion, 279th Infantry Regiment, on 45th Infantry Division. He was killed up on by the Iron Triangle. We're both here. My great aunts and uncles were coming here until about 3 years ago. They couldn't make it anymore. They were in their 80s, and he is the 13th or 14th child out of 19. And my great grandmother, I was told, was always waiting for him to come up over Hovey Mountain in Munson, walking home, dragging along his bull. He had a bull, and his name was Ira, and he used to walk that thing everywhere and service it, or get service, or whatever. Anyway, little family history. Anyway, we're here just hoping that someday that we get word that he's found, and it's kind of sad because even though he was killed in the Korean War, a lot of our family, and we have probably 350 members throughout the country, and none of them really knew only the name of Harry, Uncle Jake we called him, until last year when we wrote a report about what we saw here and what we witnessed from everybody speaking up, and we really appreciate it. And I am on the Facebook page, and I am a top fan. And I just want to say, this gentleman over here, the retired colonel, was your son from Sandwich, Mass? Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Okay. One of the members from, or one of the sets of remains from the 55 that came home with President Trump was just buried up in Sandwich, Mass. And we just hope one day we'll be able to do the same. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Betty Roberts. I'm here with my daughter Kimberly White and my granddaughter Samantha Bradshaw. We're here in memory of my uncle Jackie Dale Blosser. He was assigned to the D Company, 1st Battalion, 32nd Infantry, 7th Infantry Division. A lot of words here. He went missing in the Chosin 2 December of 1950. He was one of 14 children. Only one now is remaining. I would be interested in sharing information with anyone that's family members are from the Chosin. Also, it would be just wonderful, and I know we all feel this way, if somehow we would be fortunate enough to be able to go into Korea and bring those remains home to these family members. We know that there was an individual who came back to my grandmother's home after the war. We believe it was Corporal Robert Armentrout. When my recent aunt died, we found information on him, lots of pictures with Jack. We've been able to track him to Arizona, where we believe he's in a nursing home, and that's about all the information I have. My heart goes out to all of you. I understand how you feel, and I want to thank you all for doing this briefing and allowing us to continue to get information on our loved ones.
Okay, so we're going to go in the back, but then as soon as we go here, then I have a gentleman that in the yellow shirt over here. He gave me a look saying, you better get me up here pretty soon. Then we'll please come to him after we do these two. Sergeant Cox.
Good morning. My name is Walter Torres. I'm here along with my brothers, Henry and Mike, to honor our uncle, Sergeant Walter Torres, U.S. Army. His unit was a 15 Anti-Aircraft Artillery Automatic Weapons Battalion. It's a mouthful. He went missing in Eastern Chosin Reservoir on December 2nd, 1950. And on behalf of my family, I want to thank all those who are working to find his remains. We do really appreciate that and the information he gives us to that point. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ron Olacheck. I'm here with both my sons. I lost my brother in 1950, December 2nd. He was in the H&S Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Regiment, 1st Marines. I was 13 years old when we got the information about him, so he's still missing, and I'll always miss him, and hopefully one of these days we get his remains back and we have closure.
My name is Bob Thron. I'm from Iowa, and I lost an uncle who was captured in the first few days of the war. He survived the Tiger March and died in a prison camp. I have been honoring the people who fought in Korea by giving speeches about the Korean War to the high school kids. And I got my information not from history books, but from my experience and the rest of the poor devils who served in Korea. You can hear a pin drop. I'm happy to do that. And I wish that, I know there are some others, I was with 45th Division, some others that served in Korea during the Korean War. I'd like to see who they are. Would you please stand up if you served in the Korean War with me? Thank you very much.
I'm Bill Souls, and I'm here in remembrance of my father, Sergeant First Class Louis Souls, who was a World War II vet with the Corps of Engineers G2 and the OSS. Then he fought in Korea as the company clerk of the 38th Medical Company, the 2nd Infantry Division. He was reported missing in action on November 30, 1950, and is still unaccounted for. His loss occurred at the area near Kunari, North Korea, after saving the life of his first sergeant of the medical company. Anyone who was in the 38th Medical Company prior to December 1950, please contact me. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Terry Reffner. I'm here with my wife, representing my dad. First Lieutenant Melville Eugene Reffner, Navigator, 728th Bomb Squad, 452nd Bomb Wing. He went missing on February 28th, 1952. I was always hoping my mom could bring him home. We're here to represent my mom and my brother, and hopefully he will be returned home. We appreciate all the information we have gathered, you guys have gathered for us. We have learned a lot that are true facts and not stories, how he disappeared and his flight that night. So we thank you again for all your efforts to bring these people and the information home. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Maria Robles Meyer. I'm here on behalf of the Cordero Robles family to remember and honor our cousin Ernesto J. Cordero. Cousin Ernie was orphaned when he was young and raised by my grandparents. Born in Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico, he was raised in Iowa and Nebraska. He was a veteran of World War II and boxed in the Golden Gloves. He re-enlisted in the Army in the 9th Infantry F Company and was deployed to Korea in July 1950. He went missing in action the night of August 31st, 1950. We continue to honor his memory, even though there are very few alive who actually knew Cousin Ernie. But we thank all those who honor the service of him and those like him.
My sister and I are here to represent our uncle, Corporal Joseph Howl from Platteville, Wisconsin. He went missing in November 28th of 1950. He was presumed dead December 31st, 1953, 3 months before I was born. Even though I never knew him in our family, he was always, we referred to him as Uncle Bud, Uncle Bud. I did not know him, but I've heard about him my whole entire life. My mother lived her whole entire life not knowing what happened to him, where he was. Always hoped that in her lifetime they would find him and bring him home. She passed away a little over a year ago. She had Bud for a brother. She also had a brother, Richard, who when Bud went missing, Richard thought, I'm going to go to Korea and I'm going to find him. So Richard went to Korea and Richard was shot. And he's buried in Platteville, Wisconsin. There's another brother, Bob, and he's in a nursing home in Platteville. So before Mom died, I promised her, and I'm sure my sister did too, and our brothers, that as long as I live, I'll continue to do this, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that he is not forgotten and that this program continues. So I'm so happy to see this crowd, because I think this is the biggest crowd I've ever seen here. And I'm so happy to hear that you plan to continue this program, because I want you to know that if you ever do decide not to continue this program, you're all going to get to know me a whole lot better. Okay? Thank you for all you do, and I'm glad you continue to do it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Willie Allen, and I'm here to represent my uncle. His name is Theodore Landy. As a child growing up, our family was always taught to be seen and not heard. So every morning when I would wake up, I would look at this man's picture in our bedroom. My mother it was her brother. He was in a cameo and never asked any questions about it. I just knew he was a member of the family. And so as I got older, people started talking about it and telling what happened. And so that's how I found out about how my uncle, he died in a prisoner of war camp in the Korean War. He was captured, and then they marched him to a POW camp, and that's where he died, his remains. If you want to fast forward to 2001, my husband and I were living in Alexandria at the time. He is a graduate of VMI, and he was doing some security work over there, and one of the facilitators of the memorial organization or whatever celebration they were having, my husband mentioned my uncle and, you know, how he hadn't been returned or anything. So he told us about the Korean War Project and how we can get involved. So this is my first family meeting, and I've been involved with the Korean War Project since 2001, but I haven't met any of other families, and it's good to hear your stories and know that we're all not alone, and that we are a family here now. We're all searching for the same thing. We want our family and loved ones to come back home. My uncle was a part of the 503 or 503rd Field Artillery Unit, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. Through the Korean War Project, some members who were still alive from that unit, they reached out to me. So they have sent us Christmas cards, they've sent us greetings for our regular family reunion. So there has been some connection with his unit in that regard. But I'm thankful to be here. I hope this program will continue. As a family member, trying to keep my uncle's remembrance amongst the family, I am passing on this information on to my children and to my cousins, so that when the good Lord calls me home, that they will continue to fight. They will continue to bring our heroes home. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. I'm Duff Sube. I'm here with my sister Karen Rowland, and we're here in remembrance of my uncle, Private First Class Charles Alfred Bordeaux. He was with the United States Army, C Company 121, Regiment 24. He was part of the Smiths Task Force, and he was also on the Tiger Death March. And he was captured on the very first day of the war, the conflict, July 5th, 1950, 4 days before his 18th birthday. Talking to a fellow POW, Private First Class Gerald Brown, he was beaten for talking to a French nun, another prisoner of the camp. And between the beating and the malnutrition, he died on April 29th, 1951 in Andong, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he was also, Private First Class Brown was also part of his burial detail, and he did tell me they buried him a little bit up the hill at the prisoner camp. And thank you.
Waiting on my dad. My name is Alvina Golden, and I'm here for my father, Master Sergeant Reuben Tompkins. He went missing in February of 1951, and they gave him up for dead in May of 1951. He died from malnutrition and wounds in one of the Suwon camps. And I come a lot. Because of you guys and because of the work that they do here. And they have been so very nice to me about information and everything that they can get from my father. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate them, period, because they spend a lot of time. And I had to grow up without a father. And my mom, she never remarried. She always said that he would come home. I was in South Korea, and the people there were so very nice to me. I was able to go with the group that was the military, so I had all these handsome generals I was riding around. And I think when I was able to do that, it made me feel much better about the war. So I am glad that they are continuing this work, and I hope that they will. I brought my granddaughter and my great-grandson. I'm trying to teach family. It's off. They won't know who my dad is. So in order to teach him, I can bring one person or another. So I try to bring one family member, the younger group, so when I'm gone on, they will remember. I did not have any sisters or brothers, so I had my dad a memorial at Arlington Cemetery. So if I can take them there and they can see some of the history that he has, then they can be proud of him too. And I thank you.
I am Brenda Lott, and I'm here to honor my brother, Corporal Daniel Doolin, of the I Company, 3rd Battalion, 187th Regiment. He died in the Battle of Sunjan near Opari in October 21, 1950. He was 18 years old. I was 6. He died just 24 hours after flying over the Han River into North Korea. As a paratrooper, Rakusan, he was a part of a mission to stop the train on its way that Pyongyang was falling and the North Korean officials were leaving, and there was a huge group of prisoners of war, of course, headed toward the Manchurian border. He was a part of the mission to stop that train, help save the POWs, and capture the North Korean officials. Of course, you know that that was not successful. He, along with many of the prisoners of war, were originally buried in Pyongyang. I have the best news, and I guess most hopeful news that I've had in all of these years, is that just a few months ago, after they have been disinterring the remains in Pyongyang, that the man who was buried in the grave touching my brother in Pyongyang originally was identified in Hawaii at the lab. So it somehow makes you think that maybe they traveled together and perhaps he might be coming up in front of all of those experts who know how to do that. But it was not successful. Many of those POWs died, of course most of them, and I have met many of their loved ones who are here in this room today, and we have a special bond because they were buried together within just days of each other, and someday we can get both of them, both groups, home. They gave it all. They gave everything that they had. And that's important for us to remember, because I get very dismayed when I hear Korean War, the forgotten war. In fact, I was at a museum in Florida recently, and it had a big room with Korea part of it. It said Korean War, forgotten war. And I told the man standing there, it's my brother you're talking about, and he's not forgotten. So, wars are fought by real people to the death, and all of us in here lost someone. And we are evidence that we have not forgotten, because as long as you love somebody you lost, you'll love them. Or if you love somebody who loves somebody. We have grandchildren in here, so they've been loving through generations. It is not forgotten. And our government says it's not going to forget the war, nor our loved one. And I'm happy to say that it is not only not a forgotten war, it is not a forgotten victory. I traveled with there's been about 200 of us now have gone to Korea.
And I can tell you the Koreans in South Korea have not forgotten the victory of that war. We saw and heard a grateful nation. And we must always know how grateful that they are. When I went a few years ago to have my brother honored, I was asked to write and read a letter. And in that letter I said, Daniel, they did not know your name, they did not know your face, but they knew your presence, and they are forever grateful. About an hour after I read that in Korea, they took us to a memorial, and I saw my brother's name, and it took me to my knees. I said to Dan, I said they didn't know your name, but you know what? They looked it up, and they put it on a bronze monument, and all of your names are there. I took many, many pictures of the wall. I may have a picture of your loved one's name. They're all there on that wall, and you too can see that. If you're interested, let us know in the trip. We saw that country as they will never see it, free and prosperous and very proud. And I saw it in the eyes of the soldiers that I met there who fought. I heard it from the words of the minister of the MPVA, who will be here Thursday night. And I felt the genuine appreciation and gratitude from the shopkeepers everywhere that we went. They thanked us. So I say to my brother, Dan, now, Dan, you were my first love, and you were my first grief. At 6 years old, you carried my diaper in your back pocket and taught me to love the ocean. I will never stop looking for you, looking for your remains. And in the meantime, I am so proud to be a part of my Korean War family here. Thank you.
My name is Carol Garrity. I'm here for my brother Daniel Garrity, Daniel. And we have been coming, my sister Joan is here with me. We have been coming to this meeting for years and years and years. Last year we brought 5 nieces and nephews of my brother. We said, you're the next group that's going to come. When we leave, you're on. Nick, I just am so caught by this now because you'll wait for my last line. This year we have 6 of them with us. One of them took his little sons to Korea last year to see it. On last Friday, July 26th, we got the call that his remains have been identified. We really didn't, and I'll be back next year. I'll say this again next year, never give up. Just keep waiting and waiting. And if those who were here last year saw the screening where they showed you the clavicles, that's how he was identified. We have lost tons of blood for DNA testing. Because now they do it with a swab, I know. But we now will get my brother's remains back this year. So do not give up. They are searching so hard. He was lost on November 30th. That's when they said he was captured. He died in prison camp. He died in Camp 5. We knew he was dead in 53. They sent us the final word that when the repatriated people told us that he was dead. But my mother never believed it. She never believed that he was dead. He was somewhere. So much so, we lived in Brooklyn. She never locked the back door in case he came home and didn't have a key. And she died in 83. But we have the nieces and nephews here that are going to take it on, and we've got grandnieces and nephews that, if we have to, we'll have a representative here. So good luck, those of you who have not had it. We are walking on air.
My name is Ann Blake. I'm so moved by the comments already. I mean, that's an act, I don't know what else to say, but I'm here. It was my mother's brother who was, well, I have to confess I'm an Army brat. However, my uncle joined the Air Force, so as not to be under his father's shadow, who was also in the Army at that point. So he was a first lieutenant, I think his second or third bombing mission in an Invader B-26. And he took off from Kunsan K-8 Air Base around just after midnight, and his mission was redirected because of the weather north of Pyongyang, and they lost contact at 3:30 in the morning. I learned about all of this because in my family, my grandfather had to call off the search. They never found the crash site. But of course, in war, you only have X amount of time to use any resources for that. So we always hoped the same thing. Someday, Uncle Jim come in the door. I didn't know about this association growing up until there was a bit of a brouhaha in the family because my mother gave her dad's helmet to this association instead of to other places that wanted it. And I thought, wow, this really matters. And so I started coming when she died. And it is a family, and they aren't forgotten. And even without their remains, they're honored, and I'm privileged to be part of this. I had memories of my Uncle Jim when I was 4, 3.5 or 4. In those days, an Army plane had to stop on the Azores and refuel. And I was running around on a tricycle, and even for an Army brat, there's something quite romantic about a flyboy. He was very dashing, cigarette hanging, and he was willing to play with me. I had a crush on him, to tell you the truth. So I'm honored to be able to be here. If anybody knows about you forgive me, it's the 13th Bomb Squadron, and it was an Invader B-26. And although I'm an Army brat of many generations, and my son's a decorated Iraqi war veteran, it's my grandson that's going to carry the flag for this. He's now 13, and on the next trip, he'll be with me. And I agree, it's the next generation that will carry this, no matter how long. And I thank you for doing it. I'm so proud of a country that does this. And my dad was also in the Army, and he always lectured. He didn't lecture, he was proud. He said, freedom isn't free, and you have to fight to defend it. But if you lose it, you will fight unimaginably harder to get it back. So I'm grateful to our nation that continues to fight for freedom, and God bless America, and God bless you for doing this.
My name is Patsy Whiting, and I'm here for my brother Paul Owen Parkhurst, First Lieutenant. He went missing about a week before the ceasefire. He was in the Triple Nickel Artillery Battalion, and I guess the Chinese got word that there might be a ceasefire, and so they decided to make one large push and decimated the Triple Nickel. It was the second time, actually, that the Triple Nickel was decimated in Korea. There's a book called The Forgotten War, and it has the history of a lot of those battles, and it's devastating to read, especially when your brother was involved in that. Paul was an incredibly wonderful young man. I was in college when he went missing, and my dad I'm an Army brat also. My father was in the Second World War and in the Korean War, and he was in Korea when Paul went missing. So we had a little bit of information about what happened, but not much. And it's been a long time. This is my 4th visit here, and I'm really grateful. My husband and I have been to Hawaii to the Punch Bowl. We've seen his name up on those wonderful marble monoliths at the Punch Bowl, and I love the Korean Memorial here in Washington. It's very moving. I just want to go up and hug those soldiers. I'm so grateful for what you're doing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leah, and I'm here with my dad on behalf of our uncle Andrew Mahan, who was a U.S. Army Sea Battery 38th Field Artillery, 2nd Infantry Division. So if anyone here has family members from there, we'd love to speak with you. And we are lucky we live in this area, but we do have family from out of town this year. And in our great family tradition of military service, Uncle Andy's great niece is joining the Army when she graduates next year. So.
My name's Mike Palmentieri, and I'm here with my mom, Eileen. Her father fought in World War II and went missing in action November 2nd, 1950. She was 18 months old. So she really didn't get a chance to bond with him at all. She has lots of questions. And he was part of, out of Fort Devers, Massachusetts. He was a Sea Battery, 99th Field Artillery, 1st Cav. If anybody is from Massachusetts, that area, maybe was in Fort Devers, if you want to come talk to my mom, maybe she said, has a lot of questions. She never knew him. And her mom kind of always believed he would come home, so would never talk about him. So, all right, thank you.
Hello, my name is William Pentecost. I'm here representing my brother, who's first lieutenant in the Air Force. He was in the 428th Fighter Bomber Squadron, flying a dive bombing mission on the Chong River, which at about 50 feet altitude, the pilots behind him saw the wing come off his aircraft from ground fire, and he was doing almost 600 miles an hour. So he crashed, he was seen crashing into the river. So he's well up into North Korea. We don't expect to ever get his remains unless, who knows, maybe something washed ashore and he was in a box somewhere. In any event, he was a fine young man, as I've heard many of these folks here say about their relative. He graduated with a degree in engineering from the University of Wisconsin, raised in a little small town in southern Wisconsin, Lancaster, for those of you who have heard Wisconsin mentioned. He was an all-state basketball player at 5'7". He was a scratch golfer and an all-around good guy, and he says he was just another out-of-work train driver when he had his engineering degree. But he enrolled in the Air Force Aviation Cadet Program. I don't know what they called it then, but at any event, he graduated in May of 1952 and got married the same day. And I was at that wedding. I was 6 years old, and I was 6 years old when he was shot down and died in 1953 in January. So I was 6. I was even younger than these girls standing on the stage. I'm 73 now. We got a letter from his commanding officer after the telegram, probably about a month later, and that's the last we heard about Jack until I got a letter in early 2011, and date myself, I still haven't made the transition to 20, and invited me to this conference. Well, I hadn't been hiding for all those years, but that was all we had in all those years, nothing since 1953 until 2011, and I've been coming to these conferences every year since. And that's where I got the first report that gave me better details about what really happened. It was real sketchy before that, and we didn't talk about it much. 11 years later, when I was almost 18, I wanted to enlist in the Navy, and I had to get my father's permission, and I wanted to do it on the same day that my brother went missing. And that's the only reason I needed his consent, because if I waited 6 weeks longer, I wouldn't need it. But he said to me, okay, I'll sign the papers, but you have to promise me you won't go to Vietnam, because I don't want you wasted like your brother was in Korea. So I said, okay, I won't do that. Last month, my wife and I went on a trip to South Korea. It was hosted by the Presbyterian Church there in Seoul, Saeeden group, and if you ever get the chance, I grab it and go. It was probably the closest I'll ever come to be treated like royalty. I was among 6 families that were represented for those that were killed or still missing from the Korean War. The other folks, I think about 19, were veterans of the war. But when we walked in, they took us everywhere. They feeded us. We went to the Naval Base, the Marine Corps headquarters, the Army headquarters. It was just wonderful. Banquets, met by brass bands everywhere. But when we walked into the sanctuary of their church for this memorial ceremony, they had these 6 pictures, big posters up on the front wall. And I saw my brother's picture up there. And I tell you what, I had a pause. It's like, whoa, that's Jack up there. And they gave us a personalized photograph, beautifully framed. It was just, but I have to say, I'm walking through there, and there's a Korean War veterans, whole big group of them there, and they're treating us Americans like we're some kind of royal. I mean, literally, they treated us as if we were a royal family. They could not have been more gracious, welcoming, and everywhere we went, what we heard over and over is thank God for you and your family and your relatives, because it was what they did that gave us our lives, that gave us the success that we have in this country, and there's no doubt they live it every day, and they appreciate it, and they express it. I don't know how you can say anymore that if my father had lived long enough, he would have known my brother's life was not wasted. It was not wasted. And I did go to Vietnam because he died, and I figured that released me from my promise. So I did go, and thank goodness I was a Navy hospital corpsman back then, and in support of the Marines, and I had all I wanted of war, I can tell you that. And I met on that trip as well the Korean veterans, 1 Army and 1 Marine that were in the Chosen. And I gotta say, you know, I know the history of the Chosen, and I can't imagine, you know, the horror that those guys went through. And they're still around. And to see them honored by the Korean people that way was really kind of special. But I'm sitting here looking at those posters, including my brother up there on the wall. He got a DFC and his 3rd Air Medal for that mission, oh, whoopie-doo, and he got a Purple Heart, but that's the medal nobody really wants to get. I can tell you that. I didn't want one, and I didn't get one, thank goodness. But there were 3 Medal of Honor winners, 1 Silver Star winner, and 1 just young Army private who just was missing, and my brother. The Medal of Honor winners, one of them was a Marine, one of them was one of a pair of brothers. They were both on that wall, both lieutenants in the Army, and they died 11 days apart. Their name was McGovern. One got the Medal of Honor, and his younger brother got the Silver Star. And his brother was at this meeting, and as my wife said, he had the worst case of survivor's guilt we've ever seen. Charlie We're going to see him Saturday, and his wife. They're lovely people. But you just kind of had to say, Charlie, you know, just be proud of them. This is about your brothers. It's not about you. But I was a little hesitant at first about going on this trip. But boy, I sure am glad I did. If you would see how grateful the Korean people are, you'd know that whoever your loved one was, brother, father, uncle, cousin, they died for a good cause. Those folks are truly, truly grateful. Thank you. That's enough.
So, folks, we have time for one more. And as a reminder, tomorrow at the beginning, we'll also do another remembrance ceremony. So one more right here.
Yes, my name is Robert Moore. I'm here to honor my brother, Captain Harry Moore. This happens to be my 37th meeting. With me today is Captain Moore's wife, and now my wife of 65 years, Lois Moore. In addition, we have Captain Moore's daughter, Jana O'Rear, and we have Captain Moore's granddaughter, Christiane O'Malley. They're both here with us. And also is Captain Moore's niece, Nancy Jensen, and her husband, Randy. Captain Moore was shot down in 1951. He was a fighter pilot. He also served in World War II. He was shot down in 1944, and he was supposedly killed, but after 51 days, he walked out of China, got away from the Japanese, and resumed his fighting. He subsequently then went to Korea, and he served his 100 missions, and then his tour of duty was extended, and I think it was the second mission after that he was shot down. Almost all the pilots of P-51s were killed because they had no match for the MiGs. Captain Moore was a patriot, as all of your family were too. If you look around and you see how many of us are here, and each one of us representing someone who was killed, it's a disgrace. We must do something to stop this. We did a documentary. You might want to look at it. It's Keeping the Promise Alive. It talks about what the DPA does, and DPAA and DPMO does. Captain Moore was shot down in 1951, as I said. Lois and I were married 4 years later. Then in 1997, in fact, 202 was when we were notified, as a result of the investigation by the DPMO. An investigator, Dons Blosser, who is here, found in the Russian archives that my brother hadn't been killed. He found the names of the pilots, the Russian pilots that shot him down. They remembered his name after 50 years, said he was interrogated by a Russian colonel, captured and sent to Moscow, forced to train Russian pilots. That has never been verified. We can't get any more information. Our government keeps everything classified, so we can't find out anymore. But we still keep trying, and we're going to keep trying. And we are so happy to see younger people here now that maybe will keep this alive. We must do it, and we must stop these wars. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, so that will conclude today's remembrance ceremony. Again, tomorrow we'll have another one. A couple of things logistical before we go on a break. Number one, we did put local restaurants on the table for you, as well as the hotel here is ready. I believe they have ready-made sandwiches, and the restaurant itself is pretty good. Now, I did neglect to do one thing, and sir, before you take off, if I could have all Korean War veterans, I know you already stood up, if I could have you stand up, please. And then if I could have all those in the crowd today that have served in uniform, please stand. First and foremost, thank you so very much for your service to this great nation. So at this time, let's go ahead. We're going to take a break. We're going to go ahead and break until we really have a good schedule, so I want to get y'all back in here. So let's go ahead and break. Let's be in. I'm going to say a quarter till, which means y'all will be seated by 10 till. But so let's go ahead. It's a quick break. So I'll go ahead and let you go, but please try to be seated by a quarter till 10. Thank you, or quarter till 11.
When we found out that Senior Airman Johnson was coming, goosebumps. This was big, especially for me, because I was here. Very, very proud that she's able to come. I can't think of anything more rewarding than that.
That I was slotted for Vietnam, and it was the month of my dad's anniversary, so I had a lot of mixed emotions. Like, I was excited, and then it kind of hit me like, wow, I'm going to do the exact same thing that he did. What I remember the most is my dad always being gone and then coming back with stories. I was actually 9 when he passed, but I was in Hawaii, so my whole childhood I just remember him being in DPAA.
He was a big man, but he was also just a really, really nice man. He had been on multiple missions before the accident, so I knew him as the team sergeant, and he came through, set up for his teams, etc., pulling equipment from the warehouses.
They were telling me stories and talk about how awesome he was at his job. Like, it really touched me. It was great to hear, and then it pushed me to make sure I tried my best when I was here. Going through this mission, like, it just opened my eyes a little bit more about what we do and what has been done in history, and the lives that we lost. And it kind of hit me that I'm here, I'm a part of this now, so I kind of want to continue on strong. I felt like I was finishing his mission for him. It really motivated me to try my best for him. The mission as a whole, what we're doing, why we're here, I think it's pretty cool, and it makes it worth it. I'm proud of myself. Like, I never would have imagined doing anything like this. It's kind of amazing to know that people are still remembering him, and not just him, but everyone that was a part of that crash. So it's heartwarming to know that other people care.
It's still a raw nerve for all of us. It was a hard time. After 17 years, you think it gets easier. It doesn't. He's missed, along with the rest of them, very much so. I'm just happy that his daughter was able to come and be a part of this. And I know he's proud. I know he's looking down and smiling.
We found out in March of this year that he'd been identified.
And salute.
I knew of him from when I was a kid, but at that point in time, he was kind of more urban legend. It's just embracing the fact that his spirit was an ornery spirit.
He was definitely a sailor.
We're gathered here to honor his memory as one of those brave warriors. And now, after all these years, we are finally able to properly bring him to his final rest.
You know, this isn't just meaningful to us, it's meaningful to a lot of people. Just amazing part of history that we're working with right here. This isn't just our funeral, this is everybody's funeral. And to me, this is, I think anybody who feels moved to pay their respects, they should be able to. It's such an honor to have that service member walk up to you and hand it to you, and it's like, is that, like I said, it's too special. It's too precious to have her look you in the eye and talk to you as she's handing it off. It makes your heart full. Your emotions just kind of explode. I wasn't quite deserving of it because it is so special.
Eric's mannerisms and everything. It's so much like the father. I wish I had a video going.
I'm incredibly humbled to be here today. We are as confident as we can be within the limits of our science that those remains, at least in part, represent your husband.
Oh, that's a nice picture. Hey, that's a good-looking guy. These two are so similar, you know. When he starts talking, you know he's local boy.
We hadn't heard from him in about 3 months, and Mama undoubtedly felt something. So when the news came, she just had to lay down. And she laid on the bed and sent for me. I was at work at the Spalding High School in Springfield. So I immediately went home to be with my mother.
Just surprised, shocked, unbelievable, really.
I was happy to know that after all these years, somebody, somewhere, was concerned with have to call us.
Yeah. That meant a lot.
I think the good Lord is in it.
Yeah.
Because how could they have waited all these years and then came to us to bring some relief? It's really a relief to know something about what really happened to him.
Don't give up.
I just hope you all will continue to do this kind of work, to follow up on so many of the lost ones. It means a lot to us, and I know it will mean the same to them. It's a wonderful job you all are doing following up after all these years. We thought we would never hear anything else. So thank you so very much for taking time to come and work with Hebert. Because it's work you all do, and you do it every day, and I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
found out that Senior Airman Johnson was coming, goosebumps. This was big, especially for me, because I was here. Very, very proud that she's able to come. I can't think of anything more rewarding than that.
I saw that I was slotted for Vietnam, and it was the month of my dad's anniversary, so I had a lot of mixed emotions. Like, I was excited, and then it kind of hit me like, wow, I'm going to do the exact same thing that he did. What I remember the most is my dad always being gone and then coming back with stories. I was actually 9 when he passed, but I was in Hawaii, so my whole childhood, I just remember him being in DPAA.
He was a big man, but he was also just a really, really nice man. He had been on multiple missions before the accident. So I knew him as the team sergeant, and he came through, set up for his teams, etc., pulling equipment from the warehouses.
They were telling me stories and talk about how awesome he was at his job. Like, it really touched me. It was great to hear, and then it pushed me to make sure I tried my best when I was here. Going through this mission, like, it just opened my eyes a little bit more about what we do and what has been done in history, and the lives that we lost. And it kind of hit me that I'm here. I'm a part of this now, so I kind of want to continue on strong. I felt like I was finishing his mission for him. It really motivated me to try my best for him. The mission as a whole, what we're doing, why we're here, I think it's pretty cool, and it makes it worth it. I'm proud of myself. Like, I never would have imagined doing anything like this.
The Honorable Randall Schriver, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Asian and Pacific Security Affairs, will be our speaker. Sir?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying what a great privilege and honor it is for me to be here with you today. We're so appreciative of what you do. I know it's important to you, and it's important to hold us to account and keep our feet to the fire, but you're really doing something for our country as well, helping us all remember the sacrifices, what it means to serve, what it means to still believe in this country even after the tremendous sacrifices. So on behalf of my department, I just want to express my appreciation for what you do consistently in addition to spending time with us here today. So I work on the Indo-Pacific region, and so among the responsibilities that my team and I have, I do work on the Korean Peninsula and North Korean issues. I have had the opportunity, along with my great friend and colleague, Mark Lambert, to support the summit meetings that President Trump has had with Kim Jong-un. I was in Singapore and Hanoi both, and part of the negotiation team. And one of the things we're very proud about is that President Trump in Singapore personally injected the fourth pillar of our Singapore statement, which was to resume our work together in the important mission of recovery and accounting for our missing personnel. That was the president directly putting it in, and it was something that the North Koreans did agree to. And with that agreement, we were able to move out, and Kelly McKeague and his excellent team were able to move out quickly with the initial unilateral return of the 55 boxes, which I'm sure you've all tracked. So we think there's probably more than 55 remains in those boxes, and our colleagues at DPAA are busily doing the forensic work to identify the actual individuals, and as that information is known, they're making appropriate contact with families, and I think the number is maybe 8, Kelly, is that right, of remains positively identified so far. So we're very proud of that. What we're concerned about is that there has been a stall in the diplomacy. Again, my colleague Mark Lambert, representing State Department, can talk a little bit more about that in detail. But when President Trump went to the DMZ and had the impromptu meeting with Kim Jong-un, and that was just as it appeared on TV. It was thrown together very last minute and at the president's initiative. He pressed Kim Jong-un to resume our working level discussions on all issues. Of course, the important issue that we spend time on, denuclearization, but on all the areas of agreement in the Singapore statement, to include our work on remains recovery. So our DPAA colleagues are standing by as soon as there's agreement from North Korea to either accept another unilateral return or to equally important resume joint field operations, and we're pressing for that across the government. So we're hopeful. You might have seen Secretary Pompeo speak publicly that he's hopeful that we will be able to resume our dialogue with North Korea soon. The State Department team is in Thailand right now talking to partners. The North Koreans chose not to attend that event, but we'll keep pressing them because this is very, very important work. So as soon as we get that green light, we'll be ready for any returns that may be prepared at this point. But again, DPAA has made all the arrangements to resume the joint recovery operations in North Korea, on the Korean Peninsula, and we're eager for that to resume. I know how important this work is. I'd share with you my personal story. I have a cousin who went missing in September 1972. Which was a great tragedy for my family. The only silver lining being that his remains were discovered and repatriated in 2001, and I was able to attend his Arlington ceremony in April 2002. So I know what that closure means and the very important work that we do together, the DPAA, the Department of Defense, and the families who are still waiting for the information about their loved ones. So I fully appreciate how important this mission is in this work, and you can count on us to be a good partner to Kelly McKeague and his team and see this work through as best we can. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little time with you, and I think I'll be joined by a colleague here and then be happy to take any questions or recommendations from you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Lee, are we set?
When we found out that Senior Airman Johnson was coming, goosebumps. This was big, especially for me, because I was here. Very, very proud that she's able to come. I can't think of anything more rewarding than that.
I saw that I was slotted for Vietnam, and it was the month of my dad's anniversary, so I had a lot of mixed emotions. Like, I was excited, And then it kind of hit me like, wow, I'm going to do the exact same thing that he did. What I remember the most is my dad always being gone and then coming back with stories. I was actually 9 when he passed, but I was in Hawaii, so my whole childhood, I just remember him being in DPAA.
He was a big man, but he was also just a really, really nice man. He had been on multiple missions before the accident, so I knew him as the team sergeant, and he came through, set up for his teams, etc., pulling equipment from the warehouses.
They were telling me stories and talk about how awesome he was at his job. Like, it really touched me. It was great to hear, and then it pushed me to make sure I tried my best when I was here. Going through this mission, like, it just opened my eyes a little bit more about what we do and what has been done in history, and the lives that we lost. And I know it kind of hit me that I'm here. I'm a part of this now, so I kind of want to continue on strong. I felt like I was finishing his mission for him. It really motivated me to try my best for him. The mission as a whole, what we're doing, why we're here, I think it's pretty cool, and it makes it worth it. I'm proud of myself. Like, I never would have imagined doing anything like this. It's kind of amazing to know that people are still remembering him, and not just him, but everyone that was a part of that crash. So it's heartwarming to know that other people care.
It's still a raw nerve for all of us. It was a hard time. After 17 years, you think it gets easier. It doesn't. He's missed, along with the rest of them, very much so. I'm just happy that his daughter was able to come and be a part of this. And I know he's proud. I know he's looking down and smiling.
We found out in March of this year that he'd been identified.
And salute.
I knew of him from when I was a kid, but at that point in time, he was kind of more urban legend. It's just embracing the fact that his spirit was an ornery spirit.
He was definitely a sailor.
value added.
You know, this isn't just meaningful to us, it's meaningful to a lot of people. Just amazing part of history that we're working with right here. This isn't just our funeral, this is everybody's funeral. And to me, I think anybody who feels moved to pay their respects, they should be able to. It's such an honor to have that service member walk up to you and hand it to you, and it's like, is that, like I said, it's too special. It's too precious to have her look you in the eye and talk to you as she's handing it off. It makes your heart full. Your emotions just kind of explode. I wasn't quite deserving of it because it is so special.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. You know that we are deeply honored that each of you is able to share this event with us. You heard my colleagues up here, and first of all, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for the partnerships that we have had with you and your bosses and your departments. I can assure you that this is a whole of government focus, it's a whole of government prioritization, and it's a whole of government commitment. All of us up here and my colleagues, we pursue this noble work to fulfill a promise made to your loved one who made the supreme sacrifice. But it's also fulfillment of a promise to you that we owe you the removal of the uncertainty that you've had to deal with for decades. And as you heard Todd say, it is generational in scope. You look around and you see how it's passed to nieces and nephews, grandsons and granddaughters. I assure you that we are all committed to helping fulfill that promise. What I'd like to do is to provide you some updates that I think you'll find interesting, go a little bit more into detail with what my colleagues talked about. But let me first share with you that in addition to a fulfillment of a promise to your loved one and to you, it's also a marker to those that served, and we had 4 of them here in this room that served as in the Korean War. I had the good fortune of being with the Veterans of Foreign Wars last week at their annual convention. 11,000 veterans. This past weekend I was with Korean War veterans. And to a T, these are, your loved ones are their comrades in arms. They share the commitment to this mission with great passion, with great vigor, and they willingly and openly, candidly, strongly advocate on your behalf, on the behalf of your loved ones, their comrades in arms. Let me offer you a little bit more detail with what my colleagues talked about. Today, ironically, is the 1-year anniversary where the 55 boxes came home to American soil. You see the picture in the lower right where Vice President Pence, in his words, had the highest honor to welcome home these Americans for the first time. that turnover represented the largest single turnover, and the very first one since 2007, which, by the way, thanks to Governor Richardson, he was there at that 2007 turnover. Since then, we've been vigorously trying to identify the remains. 8 to date. And the reason why it's only 8 is because they're highly commingled and they're highly degraded. But my colleagues today and tomorrow will talk about the fact that over the next 3 weeks, we will announce 25 more identifications. That's not by accident. It's done to, again, the talent, passion, and dedication of scientists not only in DPAA, but also in the Armed Forces Medical Examiner System, the DNA laboratory. It's also thanks to the work of our service casualty office partners. And so those 25 more will be 25 more families that get answers to their long-sought questions. The second part of the commitment made by Chairman Kim and reached by President Trump is the resumption of field operations in North Korea. I'd like to thank Secretary Pompeo. From the very beginning, he always said, I want this to be separate from denuclearization. So since the Singapore summit, we've had 2 face-to-face meetings at the working level with the Korean People's Army, the North Korean Army. Unfortunately, they quit talking to us in March, and we're unable to reach an agreement in which to resume operations this fiscal year. The weather window itself will close, and there is just no physical way to do that. Now, we're not deterred. As a result of that impromptu meeting the President had with Chairman Kim at the DMZ, immediately after that meeting, I wrote a letter to my counterpart in the North Korean Army on July 4th, telling him again how this issue could be a bridge builder, a confidence builder to a brighter future for all of us, not just Americans, not just Koreans, but the international community. Unfortunately, since July 4th, it's been silence. But again, we're not deterred. We have our proposal for 2020 operations completed. It's already been agreed to by the State Department, by the Department of Defense, and by the National Security Council. That proposal is ready to go. All the North Koreans need to do, just like Mark Lambert talked about, is agree to meet, and we're prepared to discuss with them how this mission can serve as that bridge builder. In terms of where we are with overall accounting, you heard the Garrity sisters talk about their brother. We have been dutifully disinterring all 652 unknowns from the punch bowl. We announced this 7-phase project to you last year. We completed phase 1 in March, and we are already into phase 2 to again provide more answers for your loved ones who may have come back in earlier turnovers and been unidentifiable, and hopefully to give you answers like the Garrity sisters. Overarching wise, it made sense for us given the fact that not only had the North Koreans turned over remains in the early 90s, not only did we have 10 years of field operations with the North Koreans, not only are we doing this, it was important for us to put all of this together under a single umbrella called the Korean War Identification Project. Our scientists will talk to you more about that. Great success is coming out of it, and again, providing more answers to you on behalf of your loved ones. There's some other things I'd like to give you a quick update on that I think is important. Our friends from South Korea, our counterparts, Macri, you're very familiar with them. They dutifully do this work on behalf of their country and on behalf of South Korean families. They're here. We continue to forge a tremendous relationship with them. It's collaborative, it's cooperative, and I'd like to thank Deputy Minister Lee as well as General Ha for their strong partnership and their cooperation. Tomorrow they will talk to you about the success that they're having recovery-wise in the DMZ near Arrowhead Ridge. It was an agreement reached by President Moon along with Chairman Kim that both North Korea and South Korea would work to demine this area for the sole purpose of excavating and recovering remains from Arrowhead Ridge. They continue to meet with great success, and I think you'll be very pleased to hear about the work and the progress that they've made for their countrymen who made the ultimate sacrifice. Our U.S.-Russia Joint Commission is still very functional. It's not as progressive as we'd like to think. The Russians, although we do meet with them and we're allowed to meet with them, in fact, we're the only military-to-military engagement that our Department of Defense allows. But it's important, again, to realize that this humanitarian mission is why, again, we talk to the Russians to say, please help us with answers on behalf of you. They were here in Washington last November for a plenum, annual plenum, and this November we will meet with them on a working level meeting for both the Korean War and Cold War losses. We also work with the Chinese, directly with their People Liberation Army Archives Department. We just had a World War II mission, investigative mission in Hunan Province, and we continue to ask them for archival information that will help us find answers and, more importantly, get after what it is that we're charged to do. And then lastly, in your folders you have our 5-year strategic plan. I'd encourage you to review it at your leisure. I think it's important to realize that as you read, though, and it's very easy, it's an easy read, you'll see that it's a trajectory that we are committed to, not only in terms of the mental and emotional commitment, but also a commitment resource-wise. We are putting this mission on a trajectory. It will not stop, as some of you drew the line, rightfully so. It's something that we as a nation must be committed to do. And so this strategic plan lays out what we need to do as an agency over the next 5 years to be able to secure the resources, but more importantly, to secure the commitment by which to be able to do more of this over the next 5 years and well beyond. The motto you see up there is not an empty one. It's not an elusive one. And it's one that is something that drives us. You heard Mark Lambert talk to you about how inspirational your stories are. They're also motivational for us. Our people, whether they be a scientist, a historian, an analyst, a personnelist, a budgeteer, bring the talent, dedication, and passion to this mission on a daily basis. The DPAA team often hears from me a lesson in Hawaiian values, which I learned from my grandmother growing up as a young boy. One of the values I shared with them is the Hawaiian word kuleana. The translation of kuleana is literally responsibility. But in the Hawaiian language, kuleana really means responsibility that is personal. And it's this personal responsibility that is an accountability to you and to your loved one. I draw your attention to the lower picture. The young man that you see there is Army Specialist Zachary Boney. Young Zachary serves in the Army. He was there at our Hawaii laboratory picking up the remains of his great-grandfather, Master Sergeant Finley Davis, who lost his life in the Korean War. Zachary Boney was there honored to be able to escort his grandfather back home. The lady that you see talking to him, you may remember, that's Dr. Jenny Jin. Jenny, accomplished forensic anthropologist, heads our Korean War identification project. The underlying story, which I think is such a cool story, is that Jenny Jin is of South Korean origin, heritage. Jenny's father was in the womb of her grandmother when her grandmother and grandfather emigrated from North Korea right after the war kicked off. Her grandfather ended up fighting for the Republic of Korea Army. Her dad was born in a free country, that your loved ones helped secure that freedom. I gotta believe I have to believe that Jenny's grandfather, who fought for the Republic of Korea, and her father will be most proud of her to know that their granddaughter, their daughter, is leading the charge of finding and identifying your loved ones. Absolutely incredible. You've heard me say this to you before. There is no way any of us in DPAA, the Department of Defense, Department of State, can fathom the grief that you all have been experiencing. But despite not being able to fathom the gravity of your loss, please rest assured that we share in your grief. We're motivated by your stories. We're inspired by your commitment. And we want to ensure that your answers, the answers you deserve, are provided to you. You may have recalled in the video, I love this quote from President Calvin Coolidge shortly after World War I, when he was a vice presidential candidate. He said, "A nation which forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten." A nation which forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten. Let me assure you, this nation will never forget. We will never forget the sacrifice of your loved one. We will never forget the answers that you are owed. And more importantly, we will never forget why this mission is not only a sacred obligation, but a moral imperative. May God bless each of you. May He bless and grace this mission, our shared objectives, as He always does. And may He always bless our great United States of America. God bless you all.
All right, thank you, sir. Next up is no stranger to us, or hopefully no stranger to anyone in the room, the CEO of the Richardson Center for Global Engagement, Governor Richardson.
Well, it's great to be back. I spoke to you a year ago. I didn't think you were going to invite me back, but thank you. I confess to you that I was an endangered species among you. I'm a Democrat. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to just tell you, oh, I'm good. Before I start, I want to honor a New Mexican who is part of your legacy. Private First Class Thomas Montoya from La Jara, New Mexico. His family is here. Please. And when I spoke to you, I also mentioned that I had, when I was in the Congress, very active on the Vietnam POW MIA issue, and that in 2007, President Bush sent me to North Korea. We recovered 7 remains. They came back. Earlier in the 90s as a congressman, I was able to bring back 2 American pilots that had been detained in North Korea. And my foundation, thank you, and my foundation, which is headed by Mickey Bergman, who I introduced you last time. I told you he was great, but he's developed a bad problem this year. He's become a vegetarian. I don't know why. But I know I'm losing a lot of people here. But I wanted to just tell you that I'm very happy with the news that I've heard. But one of the things you told me when I walked in, 2 of you said, you know why we liked you? Because you told the truth last time. And I'm going to tell the truth also again when I'm going to try to be precise. I want to commend the DPAA, great work. These outstanding officers that are here from the Department of Defense and the State Department. And I said to you before that I thought when President Trump reached out to Kim Jong-un, negotiating from the top to the bottom was the right move. I wish he wouldn't call him his buddy all the time. But I want to say that there are missed opportunities on both sides. I'm going to say that. They're going to dispute this, my friends here, even though they have done a very good job. And, you know, negotiating with the North Koreans is impossible. You don't know what they're going to do. I've been there 8 times. The TV says, well, you've been there 8 times. What are the North Koreans up to? If I were honest, I would say, I have no idea. They change, they bob and weave, they lie, they don't honor their commitments, they try to panic the world. You know that. You see this on your screens every day. But I want to just stress again, Director McKeague, Todd, the DPA staff for hosting this very important gathering. I know there's about 600 family members here. Keep pushing all the agencies. I think that's the role. I'm no longer in government, but you should push. We should all push. State Department, Department of Defense, the White House, both parties to make this priority issue, the remains of our soldiers, POW, MIA issue. Good news, 25 more have been identified. 50 came. But there are 5,000. And I think we've got to press and not miss opportunities. You know, with Director McKeague's leadership, the team at DPAA is working night and day on your behalf. And over my time working on this issue, I always found them to be creative, collaborative, willing to push the envelope, to make a little progress here and there, to bring back remains, informally and formally. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about these efforts. When we met here last year, a great sense of optimism. I could sense that. The North Koreans had returned 55 caskets. And there were positive negotiations about restarting recovery efforts. Now, my organization is an NGO, non-governmental organization. We put a good part of our focus on trying to bring remains back formally and informally. We had done a trip, my organization led by Mickey, some 4 years ago to North Korea. We took Rick Downs from the Coalition of Families. He does a lot of good work. Give a big hand to Rick. Where is he? He's never here when I recognize him. Oh, there he is. But he does great work. And we tried to bring some remains back on a private effort. What we said to the government is, look, you don't want to resume the recovery effort because it's government to government. You have to pay the North Koreans for each remain. We will go and private funds, we'll raise private funds to bring back the remains. Anyway, that didn't happen. And I regret that, and I still think there's some opportunities to do this, to jumpstart the negotiations with private efforts. Now, when we met here, we put all our focus on helping DPA's efforts, both formally and informally. You know, we're meeting regularly with DPAA leadership. I've talked to members of the State Department, Defense. Everything's good. I'm not trying to be critical. I just think we've missed some opportunities. We've been meeting almost on a monthly basis with the North Koreans in New York at the UN. Those are the ones that link and deal with the United States. There's no question the negotiations have stalled, and the North Koreans have not been talking to us. I mean, this is what they do. Bob and weave. They escape. They're not talking right now. They're mad. They're shooting missiles, short-range missiles. They're, you know, making threats. And because of these informal and personal contacts with the North Koreans, we have been able to convey sentiments, messages that two sides could not directly convey to each other, but need them then to know. No, we're not big shots in the nuclear negotiation. Don't think that. Our focus has been remains, but also trying to get both sides together. But we've developed a mutual trust with the North Koreans. But when nuclear negotiations stall, the remains effort suffers. And when I spoke last year, I said, separate the remains from policy negotiations. It should be an independent humanitarian effort. And you know what the truth is? This hasn't happened. We haven't separated them. They're linked. Both sides keep tying the nuclear negotiations and the remains effort together, each side at different times for their own perceived interest. You know, a couple of months before the Hanoi summit, I was able to negotiate from the North Koreans an invitation for a visit on remains. They said yes. We planned on taking the head of Veterans of Foreign Wars, a leading American businessman, in order to investigate a specific crash site and hopefully bring more remains back. It took a lot to negotiate that with the North Koreans. The US government imposed a travel ban. We had to obtain a permit from the Department of State. We made our case, asked for such a permit. We weren't formally denied a permit. Our request lingered. The answer was, let's see how Hanoi goes, then we'll give you the permit, essentially tying the remains effort to the nuclear negotiations. Well, that didn't go well, the summit. So instead of having an achievement leading to the summit, when the summit abruptly ended due to nuclear negotiations stalemate, our invitation from the North Koreans lapsed. So I'm kind of blaming a little bit on both sides. This time it was the North Koreans that were trying to tie the two efforts. So this is one of the examples of missed opportunities that we've had in the last few years. When the North Koreans turned over 7 remains to me, and we went to Hawaii, we ID'd them, we had proper ceremonies in South Korea. The South Koreans always helped us. The North Koreans were saying, this is then, in the Bush administration, all right, we want to resume the recovery effort with you. So we're giving these 7 remains. We expect nothing in return, except perhaps a recovery effort. Well, the nuclear negotiations stalled, so that didn't happen. So I was hoping with Kim Jong-un in the last visit that there would be some movement on the remains issue. Yeah, we didn't agree on the framework of negotiations because the North Koreans don't want to fulfill their commitment, which they made in the first summit to denuclearize. They don't intend to do that. They're not going to do it, even though they said they would. So what we need to do is get this remains issue off the roller coaster. We need to separate policy negotiations from our obligation to bring back your loved ones. And these very dedicated people probably are going to dispute what I said, but I think that's the way I see it. So here are the opportunities that lie ahead. 1, we need to make public a US government decision, an announcement, that recovery and return of remains is designated as, quote, a humanitarian issue, not policy. In other words, de facto reversing a US government decision from 2005. Number 2, this message should come straight from the president's desk to Kim Jong-un. And it's good that leaders get along with each other at the highest level. and they have a chemistry between each other, that's good. I wish he wouldn't overdo it, but you know, because I don't know how much you can trust this guy, Kim Jong-un. But it's good that they have that personal relation, but it should be the two. Third, with this designation, legislation in Congress should allow more flexibility for these efforts, exceptions to the sanctions regime. Put in there a little law that says, you know, this is not subject to recovery of remains. 4, with this designation, such as formal and informal efforts can have reduced restrictions, such as travel, in order to advance the efforts. You know, for several years, the North Koreans have been conveying to us that this will help unlock the efforts. Look, don't get me wrong. The North Koreans are not good guys in this story. They manipulate, they try to leverage their efforts just as much as we do. But the North Koreans want an active multi-year remains effort. I've met with the North Korean military when we got the remains. They like our military. They like the military relationship. And I believe that the North Koreans, the North Korean military, could be a positive factor in negotiations because they know they don't want to go to war against us. So the military in North Korea, I think, may be a positive force in negotiations. And I think as it came out, we don't know who's going to negotiate for them, but we know that the spy chief has not been helpful, the spy agency that negotiates with our good people. So we don't know who's maybe it's the foreign ministry. I hope it is the foreign ministry, because I think they're the most flexible. North Korean Army wants a direct relationship with the U.S. military, and I think you can talk to DPAA, at least their discussions on recoveries have been reasonably good. The North Koreans know that bringing back remains demonstrates their goodwill to the American public and the military. And the North Koreans know they receive hard currency. That's another reason they like it, the remains, because they get paid. And it's the poorest country on earth. I mean, it's not just humanitarian benevolence. And we should want this too. You know, it helps bring your loved ones back. You know, I attended a ceremony in Iowa for one of the 7 remains that came back. And I saw how that family accepted the closure. And I saw how that family in Iowa, the ceremony that took place, Hell's Angels came, military from all over. This kid, I can't remember his name, was 15 years old, 15. And I think every family, like you here, deserve that to happen. So I think this can be a win-win-win here. I think we can make great progress on the remains effort. But it's going to take a strategic decision by the U.S. government to separate the remains issue from policy negotiations. Make it what it is. It's humanitarian on behalf of the families and the American people. Or also permit private groups, private Americans, to engage on the remains issue. And yes, is it going to take paying the North Koreans for the remains issue? So be it. And then the government can say, well, we don't have anything to do with it. It's that crazy guy Richardson doing it. So be it. So anyway, I told Mickey, I didn't want to put a damper on these discussions because this is good news day. 50 have come back, more are being ID'd. These guys are working hard. Our team is working hard. But the North Koreans are difficult. And I worry that if we keep not separating the issue as we should, you know, we're going to be here again a year from now, and there'll be maybe another summit, but where do we go with this humanitarian effort where we honor our military? We always bring our men and women back, whether it's POW, MIA, remains, that's a credo of this country. And I think it should be that kind of priority issue that can only be resolved if we separate the two. Anyway, thank you all for your sacrifice, for your service, for your nice words to me. Although now that I told you of my being a Democrat, maybe that's not going to help me. But, and again, to DPAA, you guys are great. And to our State Department, our DOD guys, you're working hard. But that's my suggestion. Thank you.